So I'm Charlotte de Rouge. I was part of the 2018 MSF IB diploma, and I am currently in my third year out of five of studying 3D animation in France at the École des Nouvelles Images in Avignon.
Perfect. And we'll just jump into the first question. So why and how did you decide to study where you are?
So I was already very much aware that I wanted to work around art and narratively. So I was very passionate about animation ever since I was around seventh grade. Yeah. So I was already very much aware that I probably wanted to do that, but I wasn't very informed on the industry yet. So I thought maybe go to art instead because yeah, art is very open and everything. So I did already know I wanted to really go and continue doing art. And I was already very, very artistic. Like I really liked drawing all the time and everything as a child. So that was already very much a very big introduction to what I wanted to do. But not everyone has that, of course. But I just happened to really want to put my hobby into my future career.
Perfect. And did you always, what would you advise students who don't know what they want to study yet? So who didn't always have this internal passion?
So what I usually would recommend is like if you're taking a cram, like a gap year, I'd recommend really trying different types of jobs and seeing if you're better at desk jobs, at more manual jobs, at creative jobs where you have to make decisions, or jobs where you are told what to do, and see what works best because some people will prefer being delegating and others will prefer receiving that like information and doing it because yeah, everyone has different ways of working and learning and applying what they know. So it really depends on what you're better at in like mentally and in terms of skills. But yeah, if you don't know, I really recommend applying like your time into trying stuff, especially if you're doing a gap year. I didn't do a gap year, but I did have a cram school for 2 years of two different cram schools where they really were very broad around subjects and they had us do different things so we understood what we really were more into. So that was really interesting. And yeah, it's still less broad than a gap year where you can go and meet professionals and ask them if you can work a bit to test out the lottos. But yeah, so not to mention there's also the precaution, like be careful because I've seen a lot of people in artistic areas where they thought, oh, I have this hobby that's artistic and everything, I want to make it a job, and then they found out that it was so stressful that they were losing their passion for their art and they were not enjoying it, whereas as a hobby they could do it whenever they wanted, they could do what they wanted, they didn't have restrictions like in a more career based incentive. So they they're like it'll depend. Like I know sometimes I have a bit trouble where I can't do what I want all the time, and I have to prioritize what the school asks me to do for classes. So yeah, I really recommend being careful around that too. So sometimes make sure that your hobbies are like something you can imagine doing for other people rather than yourself. So yeah, that's a precaution I would absolutely push to make sure you check that before you jump into anything too fast. Yeah.
No, that's very true to distinguish between, whether it's a hobby or, your professional life. And I also think it's really interesting what you mentioned about, pursuing first the arts and then trying different things out. Could you elaborate into that?
Um, like for me, I haven't had like any moments where I hesitated and think maybe I should do an artistic career. I've always wanted to do it, but I know I have friends who either dropped out of those schools because they were losing love for their art, like really. And I also have friends who they prefer working desk jobs so they can fully put all their love into a hobby and like a side little thing where sometimes they'll do a few gigs with it, but they don't want to do it full time as an artistic field. So they'd rather have breaks where they can work on making sure they have enough like financial stability on a job that's not gonna demand as much in terms of creativity. So they'll probably prefer using that as a mental break from all the repetitive tasks or like calculating and the very tedious desk work that can happen. So yeah, it really depends on the person, really depends on the job and on the field. So yeah, I really, that's why I suggest if you take a gap year, try different stuff out, see what fits, see what doesn't. Maybe ask other people if like if you see that you have things in common, ask them what worked for them and see if it works for you too.
Absolutely. And you had talked about this Graham School. What was that about that so you're able to kind of like try different things for a few years and then go into the path, your path is animation, right? But you were able to try out different things. What was that experience like?
Sorry. So yeah, cram school, or in French, it's often called a preparation school. It's usually a year where you work very hard, so it's got longer hours than in say a classical university schedule. I think I did 9:30 a.m. to 7:30 p.m. On a like 5 days a week and all. But they usually just like they'll often say, "Oh yeah, we prepare you for the exams that get you like application exams and everything." So it's an easier process, and the teachers will also be there to help you seek the correct schools for your type of like learning style or what you want to do specifically. So in my case, it was I originally wanted to do 2D animation, but I kind of like, oh well, this school doesn't look too bad either. Like the way it works looks nice. The area looks nice. The like the that students work looks nice. I feel kind of nice with this, and I applied and I chose that school eventually. And yeah, so now I'm doing 3D, whereas I want to do 2D. But yeah, so the cram school will really like teach you as much stuff it can so you can get a taste for things and so you can apply, showing that you have a very broad like you can learn a lot of stuff, different things and everything. So in arts cram schools, that's pretty much how it works. I don't really know how it works for other cram schools, though I probably would think they teach you how to learn stuff specifically for certain exams and how to apply your studying and notes to those exams. But yeah.
No, that's super interesting. It's good for students to have it in mind that there is a preparation and there's a way for you to test out different things and then, decide whether that is your path or not. So that's, I think, very interesting for students. And moving into our next question, how has MSF helped you decide on your university choice?
So because I was like into the class of 2018, we were only 12 students, and so we were the first class to pass the IB. And I did sense that like some of the teachers, they were kind of like starting out with like depending on the teachers, some of them had already done this in previous IB schools, but some of them weren't very informed on certain countries' schools. Whereas like I'm French, so I was looking for art schools in France, but not all the teachers at MSF would probably know those things. And so I had to help, like, I was with Mrs. Ford. I had to help with the research and like do a bit of it myself as well, because of course, not teachers not supposed to do all the searching for you. They're supposed to help you look like they're supposed to guide you to where to look. So I had some help for looking at American schools and at least trying out the American application process just in case, and to get a general idea of how it works, because the French application process is different, but in some schools they ask for something similar. So I ended up in a cram school because we didn't find a lot of options, and the cram school was a less on an application and more on an interview where they would see if you were motivated, and then they would say, okay, you seem compatible with this cram school, so we're going to take you in, and then we'll teach you, and then you can find a school that works for you. But yeah, it wasn't easy because yeah, we were the first year of students to do the IB, and also I think I was one of the like I think we were only like 3 or 4 students to want to make of art our careers, and so we didn't have as many schools come to tell us about like artistic fields, but I don't know if it's changed since, but I hopefully it has, and if not, I think they could, like, students can at least contact alumni to ask us like, oh hey, do you know how to apply to this specific kind of school, like science or history or art. So yeah, I think thankfully now that we have alumni, people can go and ask them. So yeah.
Do you feel like IB art and the IB exhibition reaffirmed your choice in studying art? Do you think it made an impact or not?
I think it kind of it was really a good insight on like the more how art is exhibited, because of course nowadays we have social media and everything, but sometimes depending on what art type you do, you will have to not just rely on social media, and especially if you're trying to sell to a specific area of people. But my I think the thing is, because I ended up in animation, the art classes at MSF at the IB at an IB school were not so much as specifically in that area, but I did get a good idea of how to curate art, how to work around a theme, and that was very good because we do often kind of apply this into my area of studies, animation, where they'll tell us you have this theme, do something with it, and you have this medium, and you have to do it like this. Okay, so that's pretty much, well, my third year is pretty much that, where we have the theme of aviation and we have to make 1 minute films on that specific theme in a certain amount of time and on our own. So yeah, that's it did help me as a practice of how to work. It didn't help me with the specific uh like an exhibition, but the exhibition still taught me skills that I can apply on things like that. So it was still good.
Perfect. And this jumps perfectly into our next question, which is about your university work, right? And what you do. You were just explaining about that animation project that you need to do now. But just generally, what kind of work are you doing? How busy you are? How does it differ from doing IB art, to doing university work? If you can go a little bit around that, because we know that you do super interesting things. So I think it would be really great if you could, tell us about that.
Yeah. So especially in the art field, there's a difference between like academic, like the art you make to enter a school and the art you make at like to get a diploma in high school. So they tell you, oh, okay, so this person has to know how to do this, and so that's pretty much how you pass in like an art IB or you enter a school. But once you're in that school, you have to suddenly you have to come up with the ideas and you have to apply all those things you learned into your own ideas. So it's going to be different. But yeah, so I think in cram school, like they taught us how to do realistic drawing. They taught us how to do perspective drawing, photography sometimes, uh, writing. They really taught us art history too. Yeah, that's a very that's another part, because you have to learn how to think of creating an artwork and what messages it delivers. So yeah, they teach us the basics, like the type of art you would learn as like, oh, you don't know how to draw, we'll teach you. Like that's often like schools, like they take people who already know how to draw and people who haven't already learned how to draw. They put them together and they just teach them everything they need to know to do the applications. And then the once you're accepted, the school will be like, okay, we're going to give you like very vague or specific subjects, and you have to do them very more creatively or more technically, or yeah. So it really depends, of course, on the schools and what they want the students to create. So yeah.
And what kind of work do you do with animation? What are your school projects like? What is your homework like, right? I think, if you're doing a more traditional subject, you cannot imagine what it is like, you just mentioned before, doing a video, and filming and I have no idea how that works. So if you could go a little bit into that, that would be great.
Yeah, so like of course in first year we have a very like they're teaching us the tools of the trade. So like they'll teach us how to animate. Well, like we're in a 3D animation school, but I did have to learn 2D animation, how to do a classical animation with a camera above, and like moving each part one by one. So we did have to learn the different types of traditional animation. We also learned photography and art history and image history. So like the symbolics of what goes into an image to make it speak 1,000 words, literally. And we had to also learn how to present ideas, to pitch an idea for a story. So they taught us some tools that we like before we got into the creative. They taught us how to use the technical tools, and then we started going more and more creative as each year went on. And so in each year they make us do a film, like be it alone or a duo or a group. So the first year we did duos, and we would do a stop motion paper film that was around 1 minute long, and mine was like little dogs and everything, and with paper on and just camera shot and everything. The second year we had to do a more serious theme where we had to make videos for certain industries. So there was some groups had to do videos for Airbus. Like they had to explain, oh yeah, so this is something we're gonna introduce to our employees, and we need to make a video to explain this to them so they can understand it very quickly. And my team had one where it was supposed to explain to patients in a hospital about a specific health condition and how it works, how it gets treated, and how to avoid it worsening or how to live with it. And so we had like 2 months to work on that, and we had started 3D animation, we had started 3D work, but we didn't have all the tools yet, so we still had some limits to what we could do, and we had to work around those and still deliver a final project for a professional like industry people. So they don't really know 3D animation, but they still know what they need. They know like, oh, I need a video that explains this specifically. So yeah, that was really the challenge of it. And this year we're doing solo projects. They depends on the years, but this year specifically, our class is doing solo 1 minute films around a specific theme, and the theme is aviation. And that's what I'm currently working on until the end of the year. So we've started like they told us the subject a very long time ago, because they were like, okay, this year it's going to be twice as long as last year, so they need to know a little bit more in advance. And so we have had the subject a while ago. We've worked on a story for a few months, and now we're getting to the rough details. We're finally entering the production stage, whereas it was pre-production. And so we're gonna have to do production, and then at the end of the year we're gonna be doing post-production, where it's gonna be sound, uh making the film readable on a big screen in a cinema. And they're like, we really learn from A to Z everything that goes into this thing. Like we do the sounds ourselves, so they can teach us how to communicate with sound people once we go into that industry. So yeah, and the next years we'll have different subjects, of course. Though I don't want to mix them up and say something wrong, so I'm not gonna go too complicated. But in the fifth year, the whole year of fifth year is dedicated to the around 10-minute film with groups, and it's the big films that can go to festivals. Some of them get into like Oscar lists and everything. Others get BAFTAs, but it really depends on how good the work is. And so yeah, it's a big load of work the fifth year. But yeah, right now I'm only third year, so I can't really explain that more.
That's super interesting. I'm inspired now. I wanna I wanna do something like that too. And that you get work opportunities like that and you get to work with real companies. That's so amazing
Yeah,
because you get an idea of what it's actually like to do this professionally, right? That's super interesting.
yeah,
Going
especially the
forward.
school. Yeah, sorry.
No, no, no,
The
it's
school, yeah, the school is also very good because they bring us the professionals. So we have like every every trimester we have a morning dedicated to like meeting to like 3 or 4 companies in our field. So they can be big movie companies like Illumination, or smaller companies that make like 3D advertisements, and they're like, oh yeah, this is what we do, this is where we work, and this is like if you guys are interested in this specific area, we're hiring maybe, or we're looking for interns. And because we need 8 weeks of internship to get our diplomas after 5 years, we do need to contact those people. And even like I'm going to be spending a whole week at the end of the year at the NC Animation Film Festival, so we can like so our class can talk with professionals, and we can get contacts and start seeing, oh, this company looks nice, maybe I'll go look there when I get my diploma. So yeah, it's they're good. Like I really recommend looking for a school that does put you into contact and in touch with people who work in the industry, because otherwise it's going to be a little tough, and you will have to stress about, oh, what am I going to do once I get my diploma? Like, am I on my own? Do I have to look for people? Do people have to look for me? Yeah, so it's that was one of the winning points in me wanting to enter that school, was that, yeah, they told us, yeah, we have a, well, like, we have this much employment rate after a few months for our diplomas. So yeah, it was very, very encouraging, and I'm happy that they do it, because I would be a bit lost without it.
No, that's super vital, because I think many people, when they think about art, they don't really know what they can do, afterwards when you start working. So knowing that you can, make yourself contacts, that you get to work at festivals, you get to, exhibit your work, and you get to look at companies, and how you mentioned before, right? There's a difference between doing it as a hobby, right, and doing it professionally. You need to, work for it, and you need to do it, for somebody else, how they want it, right? Because they have an idea in mind, and you need to bring that vision to life. So I think, doing that gives you a lot of experience of what it's actually like to work in the field. So that's super, super interesting. Thank you for sharing that. And going into our next question, more a little bit on just general, what is life outside of universities? What are your studies like? What is your social life outside of university?
So I'm going to be a big warning, but the more years you get into your school, the less time you're going to have a life outside, especially if you, as you near your diploma, and especially in artistic areas, because you can't really always put like a timeline on how much time you're going to need. And of course, in my field, we have to be able to predict how much time it's going to take. We have to know, like, oh, so like I have this many images in this video, and it's going to take this much time for these images to be created by the computer. So I have to predict how many days, or how many hours, how much power I need to get these images in time. So yeah, it is a bit like, there are some students who spend nights not sleeping, though thankfully I'm not at that stage yet. But yeah, so I remember my school, they really recommended that if people wanted to save money for so they could work without any pressure at the end, they really recommended that people do their like little jobs the first 2 years, because we didn't have that much work yet. And then after that, like the second cycle, for year 3 to year 5, you have way less time. So it's like summer jobs, maybe, but like, yeah, you're working all the time. So yeah, sometimes you get a little like night out at the cinema with your friends to watch the latest the animation film, and then talk about it and see what it influences into your future work. But yeah, it depends. I'm not very much of a social dream. I don't often go to bars and anything. I don't really do much of a very crowded stuff. I prefer like just small meetings with my friends. But yeah, so like going out for like cultural outings, going to a museum, going to a little concert, going to a movie, watching a movie at your friends, or
Going to
things like
watch your
that.
own films, right? Going to watch your own films at the cinema.
Yeah, yeah.
Oh,
Sometimes you
yeah.
don't want to watch your own films if you've seen them 15 times. But no, like, and I got to school when we were still during the pandemic and everything, so we were still working at home, and we didn't meet all our classmates like until further when we got more open and everything. But yeah, like eventually you end up like 14 people at the movie theater going to see the Mario movie, and you're like, yeah, it was great. Like we're walking home at 10 p.m. and because there's no more buses, but we're safe. Great, yeah, it's fun. But yeah, it depends the city, of course. My city is very has a very big university, although my school's not connected to the university yet. It's very much a student city, so it's got affordable housing, transportation, so like a few bars, like a few activities, museums, and everything. So yeah, I do recommend, if you're more of a social person, maybe look for somewhere where it's close to a city with a lot of students, so you can chat and meet and have fun. But if you're it's not so important, you can still look at the schools where it's gonna be less close to a city. I know there are a few that are a bit more in like calmer areas, because it's cheaper to live there, and it's calmer, and people can really dedicate all their concentration to that. So yeah.
Very true. And moving into our last question, just to be a little bit nostalgic, what do you miss about MSF?
I did like the very like open spaces. Are like my school still work on it because it's only like a few years old, and so our school's literally in an old a hairstylist school building, so it's a small building, and we're kind of with all the computers, we're kind of packed and everything. But and I also miss that, like, because we were still like not too much on the computers, we could talk with people a lot. Whereas I go to school, I check in, computer, chat a bit with my friends if at break, and then computer, lunch break alone at home because I'm not far away, and it's faster and easier. And back to school, computer. Yeah, we do have the school activities, thankfully, to like make people socialize a bit when like we have like a few picnics and everything, and they have events. But yeah, it's I do kind of miss the whole people like being a little less when they're like really vampires on their computers. So I hope it's not like that, especially after COVID. But yeah, I really liked it. Like sometimes you could just drop at the library and read a book, and chat a bit with some teachers or some students. It was really, and the hallways were big and lighted.
You're gonna make
Yeah.
me cry.
Yeah, hopefully I can find that, like if they finish the work on the new building they're planning to move into, hopefully I'll see that kind of stuff again. But yeah, I did really like the more social and very spacious side of the MSF and the courtyard and everything. It was very much a little world, and you could just change rooms and meet new people and everything. But yeah, it's gonna be different everywhere. Like I just happened to be in a very new school where they had to move in like in 3 months, and the parents helped and the students helped. Like it was very rushed, they had no choice. But they are starting to finally get their own very more schooly premises, so it's gonna hopefully improve. So yeah.
Great. Well, great. Thank you so much, Charlotte, for participating. And we've arrived to the end of the meeting. So thank you.
Thank
And
you for taking me.